Okay. Hello again from NAB 2017 here in Las Vegas, Nevada. John Lynch, Director of Business Development for Broadcast Supply Worldwide, here in booth number N8106 in the North Hall, where we're featuring great products from a number of our 300-plus vendors, including Wheatstone, including Tyline and Comrex and Innovonics and many, many others, Orban and such. But we are also featuring a brand new product out that we are featuring exclusively, and it's called HDVmixer. It's from Insoft LLC, and it's a way for radio stations to efficiently and simply take their product, their radio show, and put it on to Facebook Live. And we'd like to start off this presentation with a little video feature. Go right ahead.
Do you recognize this voice?
You've heard me on movies, television, and radio for decades.
Now meet the man behind that voice.
You might not know the man behind the mic.
You hear him every day.
Oh, meet the man behind all the commercials.
But Joe Cipriano has been in your home many times before.
His voice is one of the best known in America.
Next time,
Anybody here a doctor?
House is in the house. What's the buzz on TV's #1 show? Gordon Ramsay and the producers of The Biggest Loser present MasterChef. The Simpsons. New Mike and Molly.
Animation Domination presents a quadruple feature on Fox.
Oh, he is one of the most recognizable voices in entertainment. But would you recognize him if you ran into him on the street?
The mystery man behind the infamous voice, Joe Cipriano.
And there he is. That's Joe Cipriano on a feature presentation. But right now, special guest knocking on the door right now, and there he is, Joe Cipriano.
Oh my gosh,
Joe.
and I've knocked John's headphones clear off his head. It's unbelievable.
It is great to see you again, Joe, and of course it's been a tremendous honor for our company for many years to be associated with you. Matter of fact, yesterday I'm with a customer from college back on the East Coast, and I just happened to mention we're going to be talking with Joe Cipriano tomorrow morning. You're going to be talking to Joe Cipriano? Oh, cool. Yeah. But he's from one of my favorite places in the entire country for a particular reason.
Yeah.
He's Liberty University. And where is Liberty University? Lynchburg, Virginia.
Lynchburg. There we go.
Matter of fact, did you know this about Lynchburg?
Yeah.
Lynchburg was founded and named in honor of a ferry boat operator from way back when by the name of John Lynch.
John Lynch. Oh,
Matter of
my
fact,
gosh.
there is a road back there called John Lynch Place. And on my Facebook, that's the picture you see, the road sign of John Lynch Place.
Great.
I got to do that. So
love it.
anyway,
I
but
love
Joe,
it.
great to talk with you this morning. By the way,
Thanks,
I'm
John.
doing something that we don't normally do because, and I want you to share why, and I want to get the listeners and viewers to see and hear why we do this in the world of voiceover business. We have, of course, we've got a number of great products that we utilize for radio station operation. But when it comes down to being, you know, a lot of us in radio over the years, we move around a lot. Well, certain microphones, like the one I'm using right now, don't
that looks
adapt
like a
to.
416.
There you go. In fact, one of your classics right there in your studio, the Sennheiser 416 model, which is terrific from a voiceover talent standpoint because while it doesn't give you the wide range that you would want in a radio studio if you move around like Lynch does, but when you find that sweet spot, it's really sweet, right?
Very good. That's absolutely true. And you know the story of how the 416 started to be used in promos, and I'll tell you quickly.
Sure.
You remember Ernie Anderson, who was the voice of ABC for years.
Absolutely. Yes.
And Ernie refused to go into the booth because he liked to control everything. And if he was in the booth, then the people in the control room can talk among themselves and not press the talkback button. And Ernie had no idea what was going on. So Ernie demanded at ABC that he sit right next to the mixer in the control room, which caused a lot of problems because the mixer has to have speakers up to hear what the heck they're doing. So then they went on a search, what kind of a microphone can we use that's maybe going to cancel out what's happening in the room and be more target specific. And they came up with the 416, and that's what Ernie used, and that is what kicked off the 416 to be used in promos, network, syndication, you name it. It's all because of Ernie.
Exactly. And a voice talent in Seattle, when I first joined BSW in '92, told me about this mic being utilized how they had. And I said, come on, a shotgun? You got to be kidding me. So
right. Who would step up that close to what is,
right, because you normally see that on a camera or something like that to do a long thing. And
for distance.
10 years later, I'm doing a voiceover thing, not at your level, by the way, but doing a voiceover bit at a studio in Seattle in a small booth, and they had a 416. So I put on the headphones, and I started talking, and I moved around a little bit, and I said, whoa, now I understand what they're talking about. It is a terrific microphone, and not just you, but I mean, it's universal in the voiceover world, pretty much, isn't it? That's one of the favorites. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you go into any studio, certainly in Los Angeles, on the West Coast, you're probably going to bump into a 416, or perhaps a Neumann, a TLM 103, or maybe a U87. But I remember going to the East Coast back in late 90s, and mixers on the East Coast would say, you're kidding me, you're really using a 416? They couldn't believe it, much like what you were saying. And now, even on the East Coast, you'll see 416s. It's widely used. Voiceover people that have their home studios, they all, aspire to have a 416 in their studio. So it's funny how something catches fire, and it's been years and years and years that the 416 has been used specifically for promos. And I'll tell you, John, when I did my audiobook, I started working on the 416, and I got about a chapter in, and I felt that it was a little too harsh. So then I pulled this one over. Let me just show you this one here. Let's pull this over here. Let's see if you're going to see the back end of it.
There we go.
But,
yep. Okay.
So the Neumann U87, and I used that on the audiobook, and it was so much better because it was warmer and fuller, full dynamic range, and it just sounded better for telling a story. The 416 cuts through explosions, orchestral music, anything you throw at it.
And you bring up a good point, because there isn't really one microphone that is ideal for any one voice for all projects.
Absolutely. And you know what? And you know this as well. You could have a 416 or a U87, and then it depends on what you marry it to as your preamp. You know, I happen to use an Avalon M5, and that just works well for my voice. If you have the opportunity to demo mics and demo preamps and do multiple, connections on all of them, that's a great opportunity to see what you sound best on mic-wise, and then pairing that up with a preamp.
Now, when you make that judgment, do you make that judgment yourself, or do you get somebody else's opinion as well?
Yeah, it's a good question. When I first did it, and we're going back many, many years, going back into the 80s.
Hey, you and I go back a lot of years, Joe.
Yes, we do. Yes.
Well, wait a minute. How come you still have all that hair color and I don't? This is not fair.
Well, I know. It's amazing. And I just became a grandfather.
Yes, congratulations. That is so neat. That's terrific.
I have a little granddaughter named Theo Gray Buckley. So very, very exciting.
You bet.
But I did do it on my own, John. Nowadays, I think if I were to make a change, or if I had questions about sound in my studio, I would bring in some experts as well. This would be my personal choice, and then folks that have incredible ears and do this all the time, I would get their input on it as well.
What about getting started? And you talk about it in your book, Living on Air, but everybody wants to be Joe Cipriano, but how do we get there, Joe?
Well, you take a left at Sunset Boulevard. You know what? First of all, getting started, the most important thing about getting started in voiceovers is to take it step by step and not try to leap over a bunch of steps. So it may not be the most fun, but you do have to go through the training, and you do have to work with either a school that teaches the art of voiceover or voiceover coaches, and not jump right away into doing a demo. You're just going to be spending money for something that's not going to represent you for very long, because at the beginning you're going to grow, and each month and each year you're going to grow exponentially, in how you interpret copy and how you use your own instrument. I mean, there's so much involved in it. So step one is always getting good instruction, working with coaches, and taking it on a step-by-step and understanding how to interpret copy. So that would be, I think, how I would have somebody get into it.
You brought up a point, and I'd like to emphasize this for people who are watching this and looking at one thing, is that, hey, your instrument. Your instrument is what you are, and that's making the most of what you have. I can't be Joe Cipriano. I can't be Don LaFontaine. I can only be John Lynch, but I could be the best John Lynch I can be.
Absolutely. And that's another thing that I tell people, not only people that are starting out, but people that are working in the business, and they look around and they start listening to demos and they start watching TV and movie trailers and commercials, and they go, well, this guy works a lot. I'm going to sound like him. And then they start imitating that person or that woman or whatever. And it's always not the way to go, because there is already, Ashton Smith, a Scott Rummel, they're already working at a very high level. What you just mentioned, John, is if you can just incorporate who you are, what the essence of you are, and what your voice is like, and what you can do with your voice, it's always going to work to your advantage to be yourself, because that's what makes you unique. Nobody else is doing what you're doing. That's what you have to go after.
We're talking with the great Joe Cipriano, and there's one other project that you helped get launched, and you brought our company involved, and I wanted you to say something about the Don LaFontaine Studio.
Yes, and BSW was a huge supporter. Tim Schweiger, just amazing in stepping up. When Don LaFontaine passed, his best friend, Paul Pate, came to me, because I work with Don every day, for years and years and years, and said, we have to do something to honor Don. And I said, absolutely. And we came up with a few different ideas, but then settled on a lab, the Don LaFontaine Voiceover Lab, where people can go and study the craft and do it free of charge and work with state-of-the-art equipment. And we went around to a few different companies to try to get some funding for it. And we landed on the SAG Foundation, the Screen Actors Guild Foundation, which is now the SAG-AFTRA Foundation. They saw the benefit of it. They didn't have anything like that. They never had anybody from the outside bring in an idea for the foundation. They have many enrichment programs for actors. And so they embraced it. And they said, if you can go out and raise $50,000, we will match it, and then we will put the money in to build it. So that weekend, I made a few calls to the names that I just mentioned, plus many others who do promos and trailers. And by the end of the weekend, we had $50,000.
Wow!
And so it was no problem in getting it started.
Yep.
And it's blossomed, and it allows anybody who's interested in voiceover to book time at the studio, union or non-union. Union people get preferential treatment when it comes to scheduling. Non-union people just have to pay a small fee. We have workshops and classes that are absolutely free and are taught by some of the top voiceover coaches in the country. Now there's one in New York City as well at the SAG Foundation there. But BSW, early on in that weekend, I contacted Tim Schweiger and I said, listen, is there anything that you could do to help out? Maybe a microphone or something. And Tim outfitted the Don LaFontaine Voiceover Lab with multiple, it was unbelievable what he did. The control board, microphones, preamps. It was amazing what Tim did, and I'm forever indebted to him.
And as I recall, and I was at the New York debut of the studio back there, and as I recall, I think it was we would be at BSW, would be happy to participate as long as we are the only ones who participate in the gear. Tim wanted to say, hey, this is BSW gear. And it was great to be back there and be part of that and to see what you're doing, because this is something that, you know, hey, SAG, Screen Actors Guild, AFTRA, American Federation of Television Radio Artists, nowhere in there is voiceover, and now you've brought that to it.
Well, thanks very much. And they saw the benefit of it, and they saw how it enriched the lives of actors who could be on-camera actors that want to move into voiceover, animation, commercials, whatever, and up-and-coming actors that are looking for a genre that fits their talents. So it's just another opportunity for folks that are coming up in the business and have also been in the business. You know, we have people that want to get into voiceover and they're in their 60s, they're in their 70s, you know.
You mean there's still a chance for me?
There's even a chance for you, John
What
Lynch.
a deal. Okay. That's the encouragement. By the way, I want to end this with a question that Howard Cosell asked once of one of the top golfers of the time back in the 60s, a gentleman by the name of Tony Lima. Okay. Joe Cipriano, how do you want to be remembered? Great talent, or great guy?
Well, I would have to go with the latter.
There you go.
If someone were to say that, you know, that Joe was a great guy, I'd be very happy with that. So,
well, I'll tell you what, I've been very happy to conduct this interview with you this morning. It's been a real honor for me. Had a great time with it. Congratulations on being a first-time grandpa. That's terrific.
Thank you.
Joe Cipriano, our guest here on HDV Video, booth N8106 here at the National Association of Broadcasters Convention in Las Vegas, Nevada. Joe, we'll catch you down the road. Best of luck. Continued success with Living on Air, your printed and an audio book. There it is, right there on screen. Living on Air. You want to hear I got to say this. You and I didn't end up at the same way over the last 40 years, but there was a lot in your book that, I remember that too, in the early days. It was good stuff, you know, especially radio in the 70s. That was a special time. Absolutely.
Yeah, it sure was.
Joe Cipriano, thanks so much for the visit.
Okay, John, see ya.